we want to be everything to everybody. And I said, did you 2 weeks ago tell your meta team and your creative team, I want 4/10s, basically 40% of all of our spend on those 2 to 3 products? You asked for that. He goes, no. I said, perfect. We didn't look at CPA. We didn't look at ROAS. We didn't look at new customers. Didn't look at anything. What was the highest amount of ad spend? And was that also correlated to Google saying that that thing started ratcheting up to the top? And was that your highest selling and most selling product for a 2 weeks period? Yes. There's a client that I work with that wants to be everything to everybody. And I agree. I think that you should be, the number one tall fashion brand for tall people, whether you're a female wanting tops or males wanting bottoms, whatever it is. They want to be the everything to everybody type of tall fashion brand. I said, that's a good answer. Because I said, what do you want to be known for? Women's blouses, men's pants, women's sweatpants, men's socks. Like, what is your claim to fame? What's your Nike shoe to Nike's jacket? You know what I mean? Like, what got you here? He goes, well, kind of everything, a little bit of everything. And I'm forcing him, like, yes, but if you had to put 80% of your spend into like 2 products, what would that be? And he's like, well, I definitely wouldn't put 80% of my spend into 2 products. We have everything. And I said, excellent. I like the way that you're thinking, because that is kind of the opposite of what is happening. And I'm going to draw correlations now. And embarrassing potato, this will be kind of like the allocation mindset. Here's we're gonna shift gears a bit as marketers. We're gonna go into basically the campaigns that are on, and we're just gonna go into the ads for 3. You know what? We're just gonna say, what's the most thing that people seen in the last 7 days? We're just gonna say, hey, there's 1,928 ads. Now, obviously, they weren't all running, but out of everything, what has had the highest amount of ad spend? And you know what? Let's do 14 days. Let's do a whole sales cycle, and then let's compare that to the previous period. And what I shared with the client, I said, listen, in the last 14 days, you've had a 47% reduction in your spend, but we have 30 out of 124,000, 25% of all of your spend in Meta after reduction has been on this one product. That one product is yoga pants. Now, the second highest amount of ad spend that also was reduced by 53% is on the women's pull-ons. So you have 2 things. You have the yoga pants and pull-ons. That is basically 50 Gs of 124,000. That is that's a high concentration, because the next one down jumps down into sub 5,000. So you have like 50 grand up there, then sub 5,000. There's a 10x disparity of ad spend globally in your account. Now, that 50,000, that's basically 40% of all of your spend. We have to look at where that went. We already know it is yoga pants and pull-ons. Now, let's hop into Google. And in Google Ads, if we look at the products in the last 7 days, actually, the last 14 days when we compare spend, and then we look and say the sweatpants pull-ons and these, the same exact products are now getting 183% more clicks or 310% more conversions. So they're going to the same pants. And then we say, okay, now let's look in the back end and let's look at the reports here by saying, what is the total sales by product? And then let's just do one last thing. Let's remove all like the returns. Let's get rid of net sales. Get rid of taxes.
We're just seeing like where the products are flowing through the business.
Okay, so the only ones in double digits are the We Are Evers and the pull-ons. All of them, the We Are Evers, there's the same ad spend as inside of here, which is the We Are Evers and the pull-ons, and it's the same ad spend here as the We Are Evers and the pull-ons. So what happened, sir? You took 40% of your ad spend to 2 products. The 40% in ad spend on Meta on those 2 products became the best-selling products in Meta. It also spiked all of your spend in Google and made it the best-selling product in Google globally. I don't care whether it's brand or non-brand.
Okay, got it.
And there was a ton more brand. There was non-brand. That was another point that we make. But it became your best-selling product in Google, and then became the best-selling product on your site, and for the most new customer growth. So you said, we want to be everything to everybody. And I said, did you 2 weeks ago tell your Meta team and your creative team, I want 4/10s, or I want, basically 4/10s, basically 2 fifths of all of the ad spend. I know I can't math fast. 2 fifths of all the ad spend, 4/10s, 40% of all of our spend on those 2 to 3 products. You asked for that. He goes, no. I said, perfect. We didn't look at CPA. We didn't look at ROAS. We didn't look at new customers. We didn't look at anything. What was the highest amount of ad spend? And was that also correlated to Google saying that that thing started ratcheting up to the top? And was that your highest selling and most selling product for a 2 weeks period? Yes. So then we look and said, okay, now let's take another look at this just in a small ecosystem. Let's just take the one yoga pants. So if we're looking at yoga pants, we have to look at this and say the title, and the title is going to be technically the yoga pants. So it contains yoga. So these are the ones that are now balanced flare. They have like, no sales getting sales, no sales getting sales, no sales getting sales. So there is some sales here. Got 30% more clicks, 50% more clicks, 50% more clicks, 83% more clicks. Okay. So yoga is now becoming, in the last 14 days, it's increasing its spend. We are then have to look at our product filter and say, what about the product title? Title contains yoga, and we have 20 to 34,000 in sales on the yoga pants. So you gain $14,000 in sales on yoga pants, and our yoga pants spend 30 grand from zero. So you went from $0 to 30,000. Your nets or your gross sales went from 26 to 48. So a $22,000 increase in gross sales for a $29,000 increase in ad spend. And that's if any yoga pants sold ever. So not only did you spend 30 grand to make 22,000, you then said, you know what, push 40% of my ad spend there. Now we can see how ad spend is much more impactful than anything else that took over Google. It took over Meta. It took over all the best-selling products. I said, you know how you have men's shirts that do really well and you sell a lot of men's tall shirts? We just ignored them because it took 40% of our ad spend and went towards women's yoga pants. We sold $22,000 more. So if I said, hey, boss, for every $10 we spend, we lose $2, you said, holy shit, we got to dump 300 grand in that thing. No one would, but that's what Meta did. So the allocation and reallocation in that ad spend as to where it goes to the ad is much more important than how is that ad doing. So if we look at the amount of sales on that ad, this one here, and this is what I thought was really funny. If we look at the yoga pants here, I have 411 new customers in the last 14 days on yoga pants. If we look at the filters here and say, oops, I do this here, first time customers. So new customer. If we look at the new customers on anything yoga related, we went from 132 to 237. So how do we go from 132 to 237 when we have 411? It's because this became now the window to your brand. You do have 411 new customers. Only 100 bought the item. So what happened is we said we got 400 new customers. 300 of them didn't actually give a shit about the product that they clicked on. But the window to my store, when people look through the tiny window, it says we have yoga pants. And they looked in and they said, wow, they have yoga pants. They also have men's jackets. They have socks. They have shoes. They have hats. They have shirts. They have blazers. They have men's. They have women's. They have tops. They have bottoms. They have everything in there. I thought they just had yoga pants. Honey, did you know they have a lot more yoga pants? Too bad the window was this tall because they only told me they had yoga pants. So we ended up moving the Overton window essentially kind of over the wrong side, and we closed off the window. So I said, you have to think about your ad spend as in, if you have categories of ad spend, what if you had 10 categories? You had men's tops, men's bottoms, women's tops, women's. Think of 10 categories. And what if each window was the same size? But if more people start climbing through that window, make that window a little bit bigger, but don't shrink the other window or don't make it the only window. That's how we have to think about ad spend to products and Meta. It will permeate throughout all entirety of your traffic, throughout all of your channels.